Excited to introduce Coach White's first year as defensive coordinator here. Our first media day. Again, appreciate everybody being out here, and we'll throw it up for questions.
At SEC Media Day's cash performance, you had told him something about the Coltsville year you lost a really good pass rusher, and so the next year you changed your defense a little bit to bring the rush from other areas. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit, what he exactly was talking about?
Yeah, back in 2014, so Rob Mathis in 2013 led the NFL in sacks, had 19 and a half, really excited about him coming back. Well, he had an injury in the offseason, and so in 2014, we had to figure out a way to still get pressure. And we ended up having more sacks in 2014 than we did in 2013, but it wasn't one guy having them. We had it sort of dispersed throughout the defense. The guy that led the team in sacks that year, his number was 6.5. So you can do the math. We had 5, 6, 7 guys that had 3+ sacks. So we tried to bring it from everywhere, caused a little bit of confusion, and we'll see what we can do here, to have sort of those same results.
Obviously, you can't replace Josh Allen, but how do you start to kind of fill in maybe with 2 or 3 guys to get that pass rush to help out a younger defensive backs?
No, that's a great question. You can't replace Josh, and we know that. Everybody knows that Josh was a real special talent, one of those generational type players. What we've got to do now is find the next one. It's find the next guy that's going to elevate his game. The thing that made Josh so good, he went from 7 sacks to 17. Well, you have a guy like Jamar Watson, Boog, he had 3 his freshman year, 5 last year, and hopefully we can continue to push that number. So that's a guy that we're going to lean heavily on. Getting Josh Paschal back, that's going to be huge. And then I'm really looking forward to seeing our interior pass rush really push their sack numbers and their hurries and their pressures, and we're going to try to affect a lot with those guys because, when you have TJ Carter and Calvin Taylor and Q, and then you bring in a Looney and a Phil Hoskins, we should be able to have some success interiorly. And then when I look out there and I see guys like Cash and Square and Oates and Jamin, inside linebackers that can blitz and cause all kinds of issues, and a lot of times those inside linebackers are going to be matched up on running backs, and those are one-on-one situations that we're anticipating winning, and we need to win if we're going to be successful. So we're going to put some weight on their shoulders to go win those one-on-ones, and then we'll see who elevates. Now, obviously, we'd love to do as much 4-man rushing coverage to protect the back end, but there are going to be downs that they just have to step up and elevate. And we talk about it all the time on defense. Somebody on every down has to wear the hat. They're going to have the tough down. And what you want to do is you want to put the tough down more often than not on the guys that are experienced or that can wear that hat. But there's going to be times within a game that everybody no matter how young you are, no matter how experienced you are, you're going to have to wear the hat on that down, and you're going to have to rise to the occasion.
Brad, what did you like about the 3 outside linebackers you signed from Louisville last year? And did Jared Casey separate himself from you about being there for the spring?
I'm really excited about the young guys that we have. There's the 3 from Louisville, and what we're actually going to do is, Sean Kell is going to actually start inside, so we'll have, Casey and Weaver on the outside. We've got, Katie McDaniels that we also signed, who's going to be outside as well. So we've got some really young talent that I'm excited to see. Weaver's obviously, Jared's obviously a step ahead coming in spring, so he knows the terminology a little bit better. It'll be a little bit cleaner early, but we're going to see what those guys can do, and we're going to put the best 11 on the field. And if it's a freshman, if it's a senior, if you're one of the best 11, you know what to do in that situation, in that package, you're going to be on the field. If you don't, or if you're a 50-50 guy, if you know it sometimes, you don't know it others, that's, for me, knowledge is power, and the guys that know it are going to be the guys that play. But we have to do a good job as a coaching staff to make sure we don't overwhelm them. You give them a package that they can play fast and then let their athletic ability show.
What did you see from
MJ Devonshire in the recruiting process, and what do you think he can do for you in the secondary?
MJ's got terrific speed. Everybody knows, he was a sprint champion there in the state of Pennsylvania, and he's got smooth hips. He's a great athlete, so he's going to be another one of those guys, a young guy that, he's going to be thrown in the fire, and we'll see what he can do. In that secondary, we don't know who's going to be the starter. I can't tell you right now, come August 31st, who's going to be running out there. Now, there are some guys that, as you start the preseason, you have to have, a depth chart, but it's in pencil, and that could change daily. It could change weekly. It can change as the scrimmages. When the lights go on, because it's one thing to do it in practice. It's another thing to do it in a scrimmage, because that's a little bit, it's a heightened sense of urgency. And then at the end of the day, when it goes to game time, it's an entirely different level. And so you may see throughout the season some things get, shuffled around. But we'll find the best 11, and it may not be the same 11 in every personnel group. We're going to find in the right situation. We talk to our guys all the time. Find a spot, find a role on this team, carve it out, find your niche, and then become a master at that role. And then if you become a master at that role and you gain confidence both in your teammates and the coaching staff, then you'll see your role expand.
During years of coaching, what schematically to help those young guys? Obviously, different skill sets for different players as you bring them in and out. But through your experience, what do you do to take that pressure off of a group that is going to be really inexperienced?
We're going to have to do a great job of keeping it simple for us, but complex for an offense. We need them to have to go through checks. They make them work without doing putting a lot on our guys' plates. So we'll be multiple in some regards that way. Things that I'll ask older guys to do the disguise part, let the younger guys, maybe be a little bit more stagnant. And then, because the older guys right now, and we know that we've got a good experienced D-line. We know we've got inside backers. Boogs played, was a full-time starter last year and played a significant amount as a redshirt freshman. So those guys have to carry a little bit more during a down, whether it's communication, whether it's disguise, and let the younger guys settle in. And then once they get comfortable, then we can start expanding their package.
Brad, what are your expectations for Moses?
With the injury to Devontae, Mo's role sort of, I say increased, but he's going to have to be a person right now that, as he goes through this camp, he's a guy that needs to be ready to go in the game. And, again, I'm excited about what Yusuf can do. He had a great spring, but right now at that safety spot, we're still looking at bodies, but Mo's going to be that guy that's getting some reps with his second team, and you're one injury away, and so he's got to be able to learn the defense. It was nice to get him again, kind of like Jared Casey in the spring. So this won't be all new when he steps on the field this afternoon. So hopefully things slow down a little bit quicker for him than some others. And you saw it in the spring that he's not afraid to hit. He's a guy that'll come down, he'll strike you. He's a really good tackler. It's just knowing what to do, where to be, what checks to make, because we ask our safeties to handle quite a bit in terms of communication, and so he'll have to pick that up.
Brad, your impact on the outside pass rush with Josh and Boogie and those guys, I don't think anybody missed that this past season. Can you talk about this offseason? How has your involvement with the interior defensive line, has that increased? Have you been more hands-on involved with those guys to try and bring some of those, hand rush moves and packages to their game?
Yeah, well, yes, in terms of the interaction. When you step up to the coordinator role, you get to interact with all the position groups more than just yours, which is always a fun experience. Especially for me, I like getting to know all of them on a personal level. But in terms of the pass rush, Coach LeBlanc does a great job with those guys. I think we will work a little bit more as a unit. So when it gets into those third down situations, maybe there's a little bit more gel there, in the past where it was a little bit more two distinct units, an outside and inside. I think we're going to have a real collective pass rush idea, but Coach LeBlanc does a great job with those guys. And you saw that, Calvin Taylor's, emergence last year. And I think TJ Carter's, has positioned himself to have one of those breakout years. And when we let those guys get used to each other and pass rush together, they're going to go through individual drills together on third down days. It's hard. You never really have enough individual. I know when I first got here, Coach Stoops touched on it. The outside backers in a 3-4 defense, there's so much that they have to do in terms of they have to be able to rush, they have to be able to set edges, they have to be able to cover. And so it gets hard to get it all in, and you need to try to take as much individual time as you can get with those guys. But we're not going to do it at the sacrifice of gelling that front four unit. And so we will work together quite a bit, especially, right now, and then when we get into season on third down days, so that when we get to third down, that's where we need to win. We have got to win and be efficient on third down. I know everybody talks about it. I know Coach Graham probably talked about it offensively, being efficient. And if we can eliminate long drives, and long drives usually happen because they've converted on 1 or 2 or 3 third down situations. If we can get off the field there, I think we'll be in much better shape this year.
Steve Young said at the NFL level, the 3-4 is the toughest defense to prepare for, and he's a pretty smart guy. How difficult is it to play that proficiently at the college level? Because I know so much goes into that.
I think it is one of those defenses that gives offenses problems because you can basically create 3 different defenses at once, where most teams, if you're a 4-3 defense, you're an over defense or you're an under defense, and we won't get into the nitty-gritty of that. But an offense knows where you're going to be, so they can create their leverage points, they can create their double teams. When you're in an odd front defense like a 3-4, and we play 3 up front, we can stay in that situation, which creates its own problems for offenses, or we can create under and over very quickly. And so from an offensive standpoint, it makes it hard to target. In the run game, it causes some confusion for a quarterback in terms of which way are they coming because we're so balanced. Formationally, it's harder to identify than if you were in, say, a 4-3 defense. But with that, then it's, hey, why doesn't everybody just run a 3-4? There are, again, to the point about the outside backers, it takes that much more teaching for those guys because you're going to put a lot on their plate. And you're going to put a lot on those interior D linemen, and you can see we look, all the credit goes to our strength and conditioning staff in terms of we look the part to play those 4 eyes in our defense. And you have to be big, strong, rugged. It's hot, it's steamy in there every down, and that's not for everybody. And you've got to find 3 of those guys, not just if you're in a 4-3, you got to find 2 guys that can play interiorly, and then you got 2 DNs that can go. We talk about you're playing in the city or you're playing in the suburbs. And, we've got to have 3 playing in the city in a 3-4 defense. I mean, and I tell the outside backers all the time, I said, hey, you've got the good life out there, You got all kinds of space, you've got time, the tackle will set. Those guys, in our 3-4, our 2-4 eyes and our nose, things happen quick. And they're playing against big bodies, especially in this league. And we talk about you have to win up front in this league. I feel strongly about what Coach LeBlanc's done with that group. They've worked hard this offseason, and we're gonna rely on those guys heavily.
Folks, we've got to get out to finish up outside. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Thank you.
You're welcome.